that is one thing I would advise that all you guys should know about. Okay, be experts at studying workflows and understanding how digitization would come and affect those workflows, and try and make it more efficient. Having the advantage of having third party folks who can come with specialized niche applications that come sit on your platform and do the needed, and not just your platform, any platform, because we have these standards in place. Implementation in a hospital, like for Cloud9 is one of our major hospitals, chain of hospitals. They understood the benefits of it right at the beginning.
Hey guys, welcome back to Medical More Podcast. And on today's podcast, we would be talking to Dr. Jacob, who is the CEO of DH India, and also he is the medical director of the product called Life Trends, which is creating the big noise around the sector. And also, it is the only company in entire India who actually follow all the global compliances and the standards when it comes to healthcare information management. So keep watching. Hi, Dr. Jacob. Welcome on Medical More Podcast, and thank you so much for taking out the time and being here with us today. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Gagan, for inviting me and being having spending time on this podcast, where hopefully we should be able to interact and come up with what is happening in the country, and the future of digital health and so on.
Currently, you hold the position of CEO of DH India, and you're also a freelancer at WHO India, IDHF, and also with the NDHM. But more, which is something that we should really be talking about on another podcast, sir. But on the other side, you're also the medical director at Life Trends, which is something that has been really fascinating to look at because your products have been amazing. Those products actually serve the purpose that they've been designed for, and so more about that later, sir. But I would want to know how did that transition happen for you from your MBBS from CVC Vellore? How did you go? How did you? What was that transition period for you when you went into the informatics side and got your degree from the US? How did that happen, sir?
Uh, it was actually, if you look at the journey, in college, in medical college, I was not one of those computer geeks, or, of course, in those days,
Okay.
when I was doing medicine, remember that computers are very few and, like treated like gods, and you had it in one huge frame computer. And Vellore, of course, were one of the early users of computers, and we had this huge computer which was in a AC room, and very few were allowed entry and all that. And I was not into.
Mm-hmm.
In college, I was really probably a ruffian, or one of those guys who was more into games and all those sort of things. I was not even
Okay.
studies too much in medicine, but of course in Vellore, the teaching is so good that even if you don't want to, they make you a doctor. I guess a fairly decent doctor. Anyway,
Oh.
so what happened was that as I was going through medicine and then trying to decide which of my post graduation I should do, I took a little break and joined my elder brother. Okay, while I was also practicing, I joined my elder brother in his real estate firm, and that is where I got to learn about how technology gets involved, project management, and so on and so forth. And then that is it. I understood that, okay, if there is a field that can tie both up, which you have medicine as well as digital technology coming in, is there? And those days we didn't have internet and all in India, right? So fortunately for me, just as I was transitioning and looking into these other things, internet came in 1978, and in fact, one of my classmates from Vellore had gone on to do a fellowship in the US in medical
Mm-hmm.
informatics. That's when I first heard the word medical informatics. And when I heard it, and I
Oh.
said, okay, this is a very interesting field. This is definitely going to have a future. When I brought up with my parents and all that, they were of course a little, wary and hesitant, but they were supportive and
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to go ahead and apply for the colleges in the US, and then, in fact, was able to provide me the support I needed to go abroad and then start off on the field. And also, I was very fortunate in actually joining Oregon Health Sciences University, because that is where many of
Mm-hmm.
us stalwarts in those days, medical informatics were a very new field, right? But many stalwarts
Right.
were there among my professors. There was people like Dr. William Hirsch, Dr. Bill Hirsch, who's a world, firstly in academy and well known in the academic field of medical informatics, and also an expert in information retrieval. There was Dr. Joan Ash, who's also again well known for her studies and research papers she's done on observations of digital health adoption and so on. So a lot of related sort of fields which I was interested in is what got me into OHSU. And then while I was at OHSU, again, I was fortunate because I had a classmate of mine who actually was in Kaiser Permanente, where Epic was rolling out their products. And it was my
Oh,
classmate who advised me, why don't you go and apply for Epic? So which I did. And then, because I'm a doctor and all that, somehow I was able to get into Epic also in those days. Okay, just as I was finishing my degree. And then I had this very fortunate experience in Epic, because what happens when I joined Epic, Epic everybody knows. Today everybody knows Epic, because in those days, of course,
right.
not so many knew it. But when I had joined Epic, Epic was mainly into OPD products. They had not yet started the inpatient. Because I was a doctor and I joined them, they immediately took me and put me into the inpatient product. And in fact, I was one of their first, what is known as application specialists for rolling out inpatient. Okay. That was a real learning experience, because, we had to completely design all the workflows and all that on behalf of Epic in our first client, which was in Chicago, Evanston. And that was a real learning experience also. So these fortunate experiences that I've had through my journey, because I guess there were not too many doctors who were getting digital health in those days and getting especially into the field and doing project management and all that. So I was able to, kind of piggyback on these experiences, and that's how I was able to yeah, got into that field, and that's the journey. Then again, when I was in the US, I was fortunate. I was getting all these breaks, and then I actually joined the client of Epic, which was in Portland, Oregon again, where I had done my masters, and I had joined the county health department. There was in charge of rolling out Epic, especially the EHRs across the county health department. Okay, so this is how it all built up, and then unfortunately, not unfortunately, but then an incident took place in the family where I had to leave all that and come back to India, because I had to look after my blind mother who was alone out here. I lost my elder brother basically,
Okay.
okay, who
Oh,
was looking after
so
her,
sorry.
and then he passed away suddenly, and then I had to leave everything in the US and come back to India. When I came back to India, and I was kind of just I had to be in Goa because that's where my mother was, and she was blind and I had to look. But in that time, I used to go for conferences and all that. We had an Indian Association of Medical Informatics here who used to hold conferences. We used to go, so I used to go for conferences once in a while, present in these conferences and all that. And then what happened was that my mother passed away in 2011. So then I was kind of free to sort of, okay, where can what should I do next? I was looking at going back to the US. That is when I met my co-directors of Life Trends. Okay. That's where the story
Oh,
of
okay.
Life Trends really comes in now.
When you start working at Life Friends, with Life Friends, you there's this term that you guys use called as the dynamic duo, which has the EHR and which has the EHR and the HIS integration. How does that work in terms of increasing the healthcare delivery, in terms of efficiency, in terms of effectiveness, and also in terms of ROI?
Uh, Let me put it this way firstly.
Okay,
What was the differentiator in Life Trends to the other companies when I had gotten in 2012? Okay.
compliance standards.
Exactly. They had a product which was standard compliant and which had the future thinking of saying that, okay, we will have to interchange data or exchange healthcare data with other systems. Therefore, let us get ready from now itself. Now, that came about
Okay.
because actually they initially started their products for a niche market in the US. We had a clients in the US who
Mhm.
had it was basically for the rural hospitals in the US and what you call the critical care access, that we first built an EHR product. When we built an EHR product for them on behalf of American, I would say American partners, we realized that
Mhm.
that anyway now we have got this interoperability, we've got the standard compliance and all. Why don't we look at getting it into India? Now the problem in trying to get that into a country which there is not appreciated is like this. When you set up a system like LifeTrends or like any standard compliance system in a hospital, the time it takes for you to configure the system is about 3 times more than if you were not standard compliant. Because now every lab test that you take up, okay, that you set up, right, or you configure, you got to go and make sure that is line coded. And then also that, it
Mhm.
actually flows down the line with billing and so on and so forth, right? Similarly, every diagnosis, generally you encourage that, ICD-10 or SNOMED be used, right? So then also for medication ordering, if you want things like drug-drug interaction or which Life Trends was offering right from the beginning, Okay, when we went around looking for a product like in the US and all that, they have a product called FDB, which is first drug database. Um Sorry, first drug, FDB. Uh, Companies like Epic and Cerner and all tie up with FDB, who provide them all this drug database, including all the drug-drug interactions and all that. It's a very specialized product. When we try to look for the same in India, we did not find any. Okay, the closest we came to
Okay.
was something like SIMS. Everybody knows SIMS, right? CIMS, which
Mhm.
is basically just a medical listing. Okay, it doesn't tell you what happens for a drug-drug interaction and all. So therefore, for something like that, we had to build our own. It took a team of 10, and we had to take in India, we have over 200,000 brands, okay, which is a very, very vast amount. To give you an example, the UAE, entire UAE has 14,000 brands. Okay, in India, we have over 200,000 brands. So you have to take each brand, tie it up to the generic, and then all the drug and all the combinations have to be taken into account. So we had to build that drug database on our own so that we could provide this drug-drug interaction, which we did. Okay. So these are all very pioneering things that we did at LifeTrends. I have to say that it's very pioneering things. And, I'm very glad that I met my co-directors there who, understood the importance of all this clinical functionalities also, besides just providing, functionalities for operations and billing and all, which is what
Right.
most of the other products were. Okay. Now, what it did mean is that every time we had to go out and roll out an implementation in a hospital, like for Cloud9 was one of our major hospitals, chain of hospitals, they understood the benefits of it right at the beginning. And therefore, it used to take us about three times more, because every lab test you have to code with the Loin code. Every drug you try and code with the RX norm. In those days, we were using RX norm because we want a drug-drug interaction and all that. So that became a difficult sell for some of our clients to understand. So what we used to do is we had an implementation team. So how the teams work now in a vendor like LifeTrends is, you have the development team, which basically does the
Mhm.
programming. Then you have another huge section of you try to have a major section for quality, the QA team, which does the quality assurance and testing and so on. And then you have to have the people who go and actually deploy those products into the field. Okay, in healthcare and in digital health, you have to have that, because you can't have a ready-made product like MS Word or something like that. You have to have a very configurable product which goes into a hospital. Your implementation team goes into the hospital. They study how the hospital does its work in the paper world, or in the old sort of sorry, give me a moment here. In the paper
Sure,
world,
sir.
or in the old sort of paper, or the old system way, and how does the workflows go, right? How do you have a patient come in, get
Right.
registered, wait in the waiting room, see a doctor? How is the doctor sending out medications? How is the doctor sending out medication orders and lab orders? The entire flow has to be charted out, and then you do bring about and digitize those flows. But a lot of change management is involved there. Okay, getting the doctors to use the computer, or in getting the billing folks to also get used to it. All that is quite a bit of change management. That is one thing I would advise that all you guys should know about. Okay, be experts
Right.
at studying workflows and understanding how digitization would come and affect those workflows, and try and make it more efficient. Okay, so these are all the skills that you need. How processes? What are the processes? See, whenever you come to a workflow, firstly you got to know the business rule. What are the rules being followed? Then what is the process to make sure that the rules are being followed? And therefore, the process when you actually chart it out is the workflow. Okay, what is the sequence in which the tasks are done? These are very, very important skill sets that you need if you want to be a successful digital health adoption person. Then a lot of change management and all is also there. So what happened was, therefore, we had to have, we were one of those companies which had to tell our clients, we take 1.5 to 2 months to do the deployment, while other companies will come and say, we'll do it in 1 week. All right. But the thing is, the other company will only give you some billing software and some, normal HIS
Right.
software, right?
Mhm.
Now, in 2012, 13 and all, it was not the easiest to sell. But in due course of time, at least for us, Cloud9 chain understood immediately. But in due course of time, other hospitals also started understanding this. Now, we therefore we were only being understood by the innovators, this 10 or 12% of the hospitals who understood the importance of this, right? There was nothing from the government, there was no
Right.
mandation saying bring
Mhm.
standards in that you have to be interoperable and all that. It's just the early innovators who understood that. So most of our clients were therefore, of that caliber. But we did find enough. In fact, we have rolled out over 20 hospitals, or 25 actually right now in India. Okay. And then in the meantime, we had to get abroad because we found that India was not yet getting enough traction. So around 2016, we started looking at the UAE market and the market in the Gulf and all that, where they were getting digitization coming about. And we did shift. We have not, I'm not saying we have completely shifted, but we did
Mhm.
move on to the UAE market where we are rolling out Aster clinics right now. 70 of the clinics are being rolled out with LifeTrends. Okay, so that's where we are pretty busy with right now. And in the meantime, here now, what has happened is with NDHM and all that, things maybe now again coming over to people understanding why you need a standard compliance system and why you need, a system like LifeTrends, which is interoperable or whatever it is.
I think NDHM is really gonna step up that implementing of all the EMRs in the hospitals, going all electronic, having the all compliance systems. Would you say yes to that, sir?
See, this is a
I mean,
very watershed
that's
moment.
stimulated,
This is a very watershed moment.
right?
Okay. Now I'll tell you why. See, NDHM, remember, is a central government organization. Health
Yeah.
is a state subject.
Hmm.
So NDHM cannot mandate something. They can only advise, or
Okay.
they can only sort of encourage folks to do. But also remember, NDHM is a platform in which the Ayushman Bharat insurance scheme is working. Now, what happens is, and this is why I say it's a very watershed moment, and how we move about things in the next 1 or 2 years will decide whether we are successful or we are not successful. What happens is, to begin with, NDHM is now saying that when you are sending me a claim, or when you're sending me an operation, or say you're sending me a consult note, I am for now allowing you to do it on a PDF,
Hmm.
right? That means you're
Okay.
basically taking an image of a paper or an image of a screen or whatever it is, wherever you've done your work. And that is being allowed to go and give your claims, or go and give your notes, or prove, or send it across to another hospital has continuity of care for a patient. The disadvantage of PDFs is many. One is you cannot mine PDFs for information. It is not digitized truly. It is just you're sending a photo across. The second thing is that you cannot do as much analytics. You cannot do as much of sort of uh, conversions that are required to really bring about true interoperability, so that the doctor who's sending the information, basically what he's trying to explain is understood by the other side. Okay, what is known as syntactic and semantic and syntactic sort of interoperability. Correct. There are a lot of
Right.
nuances in medicine. Okay, let me give you an example. I have a platelet count now coming in from a lab who has done it on a patient. Okay, that lab happens to give me the platelet count in millions per cubic millimeter, or let's say some labs give it in lakhs per cubic millimeter.
Yeah, lakhs per cubic
Correct.
meter.
Now the thing is, a normal range in lakhs per cubic millimeter would be 1. I think is 1.4 to about 4.5 lakhs per cubic millimeter, roughly. Okay, 1.4 to 4.5. I think it is, if I'm not mistaken, that should be, 140,000 to 400,000 is the normal range, reference range, count
Yeah.
per millimeter.
Hmm.
Okay, or per microliter, which is equal to cubic millimeter, basically. Now, what happens is, some other labs will give me the same sort of information, but they will have the unit has millions per cubic millimeter. So now their normal range gets to be 0.14 to 0.45 million per cubic millimeter. What happens is, when I am receiving in my system, if I am a person who's where the system is say in lakhs per cubic millimeter, and I happen to receive this millions per cubic millimeter from another system, and I don't do the conversion, then what happens is my system will take that in as 0.14. Supposing it was 0.11, 140,000, it will take it as
Okay.
0.14 lakhs per cubic millimeter, which is a danger side. Below
Right.
50,000 count is dangerous. Correct. Now, when you have it
Mm-hmm.
digitized, what happens is, firstly, the standards that are sent across, when you send some use Loink, make sure that the units are the same.
Yeah.
If it is not the same, what you have is you have unit converters, okay, between two systems which are digitized. So that automatically when it comes in as millions per cubic millimeter, in my system and goes in, it is converted into lakhs per cubic millimeter and sent in. Therefore, 0.14 will be converted to 1.4 lakhs and sent into the system for that patient's record, thereby giving you the correct picture. Now, in a PDF document, imagine if you're trying to use OCR, or optical character reading, to try all this. It is difficult because it will just pick up that 1.4 or 0.14 or whatever it is. And it will not probably error of conversion of the units may not happen so well as it is if it was coming across digitally. I hope I was able to give a rough idea about what I'm trying to say. These are the challenges of interoperability. Okay. And again, like I said, India has a huge challenge because our variation in geographical variation, our digital divide, and the number of labs we have. Okay, just to give a labs, we have over 100,000 labs. US has 27,000 labs, right? So these are all challenges that we have to look at, and getting the correct digital way is the way that we can make actual interoperability data exchange work. This PDF will not work. It is just a temporary thing for right now.
So you were talking before about Lifetrends being very futuristic back in 2012. So as of now, from 2021, if you had to speculate how and what are those initial components that's required to actually take this take up programs like NDHM and the other whole revolution of technology into the healthcare sector, what are those few components, if you had to name them, to make it a complete integrated ecosystem to handle all the healthcare records, to handle the HIS for the hospitals? What would those few be, sir?
Well, firstly, to begin with, is the fact that we have to get into understanding why it is that we need healthcare information standards. Why you need, for example, a unique health ID. Okay, these are all things that have to be understood, because if you don't understand, you need bricks to make a wall, right? If you don't have the proper bricks and you have bricks of uneven shape and sizes, then making that wall is so much more challenging. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's so much more challenging and so much more weaker. While if you have bricks which are of solid structure and a certain standard and certain standard size and shape, you can make a wall of a solid structure, right? So the same thing comes with standards. Now, the thing is, healthcare is one of those domains where there are a lot of nuances in the way that you express something. There are a lot of variations in the way you can express. The way you can express about how a person has fever itself, I can have 3 different ways. I can say he's got fever. I can say he's got raised body temperature. I can say he's got pyrexia, just in English. Okay, you have to start bringing in the other languages. Imagine the variations that come. Then in India also, for example, another example is the lab tests that we have. Each lab test will have a variation in the units. Okay, there is no standard units that is across the country. We are trying to get NABL to help in getting the standard units across, but otherwise there is, as of right now, there is no standard units, right? I can give platelet counts in count per microliter. I can say it in lakhs per cubic millimeter. I can give it in millions per cubic millimeter. These variations are there. And again, the danger in these variations is that when it gets into another system, from one system into another system, there is a misinterpretation of the result or of the units understood and so on. So one is to definitely understand why we need these healthcare IT standards and structured data in place. I'm not saying that everything has to be structured. Certain important things have to be structured. Definitely diagnosis and your orders for lab and your orders for medication, procedures and all should be structured as much as possible, but at the same time made user-friendly. Now, this is the challenges of the future. Okay. When we were in Lifetrends and doing this from 2012, remember, we did not have the newer sort of paradigms that are going on right now. A lot of interesting new paradigms have come about. Okay. And to name a few of them, first and foremost, with something like FHIR, which is Fast Health Interoperability Resources, and the paradigm of an API, that means just sending a request, getting a response when it is needed. Correct? Now, with something like that, what happens is, first and foremost, when I'm designing a platform, like when we had to design Lifetrends, we had to design all modules that a hospital would require, because we could not bring in a third party and bring it in, because that might not talk to our Lifetrends system, especially since we were starting online.
But today
we have that because of things like FHIR, of standard compliance. Okay, Therefore, what happens is you just provide the platform which has got, fire interoperability, which has got standard compliance and all. And any third party can now come in with a specialized sort of niche product and sit on this platform, okay, connect up with our standard APIs, which are fire-based APIs. So this is a very, very big plus, right? Having the advantage of having third-party folks who can come with specialized niche applications that come sit on your platform and do the needed. And not just your platform, any platform, because we have these standards in place.
So, I wanted to ask you this. Personally, me and a lot of couple of us in college, it might be my seniors or anybody in that on the campus. If somebody has to follow and get into the EMR implementation or work with the informatics, in the hospital and healthcare sector, what sort of an academical trajectory would you say them to be following? Like just a very small outline.
See, it depends. There are medical informatics and health informatics has become a very vast area. Okay, that is why we call it digital health. We have stopped calling it EMRs, EHRs, and we're calling it digital health because everything is now getting integrated and everything is coming into with IoT, IOMT, and all that. That line between what is a record keeping system and what is a functionality is becoming very hazy. And that's a good thing because that's how you get integrated digital health systems into place. Now the thing is that for you guys, I think it's a fantastic time for opportunity because you can do whatever you want. All right. Now you have a choice. Do you want to just become a career person and join a hospital and become their digital health, techie person and help them build their own system? Or do you want to actually become an entrepreneur and come up with your own application which is answering a given need? Okay. Or do you want to actually take part in actually building up the infrastructure that NDHM will have to put up? Let me give an example now for that. When the NHAI, that is National Health Authority of India, decided that they wanted to put out roads across the country, who were the folks who actually built the roads? It was not NHAI. NHAI would actually source it out and bid it out to those who were actually bidding for those contracts, right? That same thing is going to happen with here also. Yeah. NDHM is going to come up with a design and with an idea of how to bring a platform. They are then going to go state by state, and each state is then going to start actually bidding it out or outsourcing it. So that is the infrastructure build of this whole, and NDHM itself is another third area of that you can focus on. Okay, so like that, there are so many layers coming on. Okay, and
so is the Sandbox API one of that?
Sandbox API is definitely one of that. Sandbox API right now, in fact, is initially they had it only for the union territories, but now it is for anybody who wants to get in. And there are a lot of changes that have happened in Sandbox API, which they have learned from the union territories deployment. So if you are a company who is interested in getting to be what they call health integrators, they're calling them health integrators, who's involved in the rollout of the NDHM for the infrastructure part of it, they are inviting you to now get apply for the Sandbox integration, integrate with it, and then once you get certified, there's a certification process. Once you get certified, you are going to be like, for example, one of the road builders in NHAI, right? Ones who will build the actual infrastructure, road and all that. So that is what will be the first step that will happen in every state. Then remember, while this is happening and you're building it for the state, then you'll also be building it for the district, and then you'll be building it, there are various layers. So there's so many, and then the other aspect is once you have the data flow starting, somebody will have to sit and analyze that data. So the whole analytics part of it is a very big thing that will come about. And by the way, I remember you asking me, one of your questions, I think, was that how is AI and machine learning going to help?
Yeah.
It is.
How is AI and ML going to play?
Let us understand one thing. In India, the healthcare, once if we properly digitize, okay, I'm assuming that when you ask me the question, what will happen in the future, we are in the crossroad right now. If we go the PDF way and keep by the PDF way, then we are not going anywhere. We are not going to get any data to analyze and all that. But if we actually move on, PDF is temporary, and then move on and get things like, lab results and all that properly digitized and analyzable, then AI and machine learning is required because the amount of data in India is too much not to handle without the machines. The machine learning and AI is the only
Right.
way we'll be able to keep a track of the trending and so on and so forth. But for that, what you need is that the data has to be correctly put into correct buckets and labeled correctly, which is why you need standards and so on and so forth.
Right, sir. So, what does your team consist of, sir? Your everyday working team at Life Trends. What is your
See,
first
well,
first
yeah, now,
approach
now,
team like?
now my role in Life Trends is a little less because I've got so much involved with NDHM and with DH India. DH India, by the
Okay.
way, is an association of digital health professionals because we found we needed a
Oh,
home. Okay, in India we have medical
okay.
informatics who come back from abroad or who have done a lot of experience and all. We do not have an association, so that's what DH India association is. Okay, it's basically is a professional home like IMA is for
Okay.
medical folks, right? Something like that.
Yeah, okay. Got
Now
it, sir. Okay.
when
Mm-hmm.
I was in Life Trends, basically what happens was I brought in two or maybe three sets of expertise to the table. One was the fact that I was a clinician. Okay, so being able to come up with the applications which had clinical which needed clinical input is what I provided to my colleagues. And of course, I came with experience from Epic, which was supposed to be the Mercedes Benz in EHR and digital health. The second experience I
Mm-hmm.
came back with is actually deploying the systems into the hospitals, implementation experience, because that's what I
Okay.
did with Epic, right? I was part of the implementation team and then I did it for the clients also, implement and deployment. And the third, of course, was actually then, bringing in sort of look at what are the futuristic sort of things that are going to happen, how are things going to move. Okay, I sort of became a little bit of the phase of the Life Trends for that time, naturally. And being a doctor and all this, always advantages for them too. So
Right, sir.
naturally, the interface, the direct interface with the clinicians, right, was mainly me, and so that's what how it used to happen, and then I should take what the requirement was, and then explain it to my programmers and the implementation team. I had a right hand guy who was my main manager of deployment, and under him, under them, we had about depending on hospital between something like 3 to up to 10 uh, what we call implementers in a given hospital, right? So that was my team was that part of it, mainly that part of it. Okay. Now the other parts that are
Okay,
there,
sir.
therefore, was my associate director, my other directors. One was the in charge of course, the main architect of the system. Okay, who was Joe, who also happened to be CEO. And then we had another person called Wing Commander Babu, who was my other co-director, and he was in charge of the business aspects, like getting clients, marketing, and so on. Okay,
Right, sir. So, can we have like a quick
sure,
fire
sure.
round? I'll just throw like three questions since we're on a time
Yeah.
constraint. I'll just throw three questions and you can come up with one word or one sentence answers.
Okay.
Is that fine? Okay, sure. So, what is that one book that you would recommend from your collection?
The one that really inspired me was the World is Flat, Thomas Friedman. Yes, that he explains, in fact, how the IT revolution started, with Bangalore and all that being a hub areas for the rest of the world. So that kind of was a very
Right.
inspirational book for
So,
me.
sir, next question. If you had to choose your marketing team and you had two spot strategies that you really wanted your team to be having, what would those two strategies be, or those two skill sets?
Okay, those two skills. One is, of course, getting to understand the business needs and workflows and so on and so forth, the processes of a given hospital. Then very very important is skill set is you have to know how to handle people and how to do change management. Very important.
So, if you had to tell the listeners to this of this podcast, two of the most important organizational behavior to retain in the organization.
One is for sure the fact that you'll have to have you have to be nimble and quick in how technology changes and what are the paradigms that change in technology.
So it was really good talking to you. It was very informative on this podcast. I really want to do another podcast with you about NDHM just separately, because you've been very passionately working on it, and I think that's something that to be shared with many
I
others
would love to. I
and
would love to
actually bring
because
in more people collectively.
thank you, Gagan, firstly for having called me and got me to do all these interactions with you and Manipal, and I sincerely believe we are in a very very important time, a very important sort of watershed moment. It can go right But many
Right, sir.
things have to be done for it to go right. But it can go wrong also. Very, very likely it is. I'm not saying that it will go wrong and be
Right, sir.
remaining wrong. But the point is, if it goes wrong, it takes a lot to recover and get back to the right path. Okay. So anyway,
No, sir, I guess we can break through that failures also. We have exceptional leaders like you to guide us through
no,
all
not
this.
not
So
not
I
just
think it
leaders.
would
You
be
have
horrible.
we have people who actually we do have resources. Unfortunately, we have the best resources in the world. But unfortunately, they are working for
Yeah,
projects in the US and Europe and all that, not for our own country.
exactly. We're not able to retain the talent in India.
So,
That's
no,
one of the
and they're
problems
present
that's
in
always
India.
been there.
It's just that we have to sort of somehow encourage them to now start putting some efforts towards the Indian NDHM, movement projects that are happening here, which is what we are working on. The fire community
Right,
is
sir.
working on that. Okay.
Right, sir.
And like I said, it's very important time. We must spread the message as much as possible and try and bring success in the first time itself. Okay.
Yes, sir, for sure. Thank you so much, sir. We'll meet again on another podcast. This really meant a lot, you being here today with us. I know you're at work and you took out the time for this. Thank you, sir. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
much.
much.
Thank you much. Thank you much, Gagan, and all the best. All the best.
Yes, sir.
Okay.